we're looking at a team that's been to the postseason 3 of the last 4 years. I think we're all really thrilled with the 2010 season, how that went. The better team was the Philadelphia Phillies. 2011 was a kind of a step backwards, and then 2012 we win the division. 2013 we get in the playoffs, and unfortunately get eliminated quickly. So I think we're excited that we have the nucleus of an unbelievably strong team, and we're just trying to get to that place where we're able to get this over the hump and extract that last little bit of talent that might still be in there to take us to the next level, add a couple of important pieces, and go out there and win this thing.
Well, let's hope that's the way things definitely develop for the Reds in the upcoming season. And of course, I've heard people refer to it as the Big 162 and the fact that it's a marathon. Do people lose sight that this is such a long season that, one game, got to play as hard as possible, and then turn around the next day and play as hard as possible. And it really takes a lot out of a team as they go through that season.
It does, but I think we all lose sight of it. Not just fans and supporters of the team, but the players as well, because we get, as coaches and players, we get really disappointed when we lose 3 or 4 games in a row, and you lose perspective on the fact that every year you're going to have winning streaks, you're going to have losing streaks, you're going to have months where you play 650 ball, months where you play 450 ball. You're going to have periods of time where you don't hit terribly well, or the starting pitching isn't effective, and you blow a couple of saves. And the immediate response quite often is, oh man, what's wrong with the team? It's like there's no season goes start to finish where you're that dominant all the time, even the 90 club was so good. Had periods of time where they didn't play their best baseball. So we're certainly looking to cut back on the disappointments, but we know that there's going to be some ebb and flow to the season.
Well, Chris Welsh, of course, Reds broadcaster, before that the season you compete picks you as opposed to you picking the season, because so many different things can go right, so many different things can go wrong. And how do you then begin to manage, I guess, in the favor of your team?
Well, first of all, I think that you have to be able to weather the ebb and flow of a season with optimism. If the guys are giving you everything they can give you, then you know that you're not going to get 100% of 100% all the time. Sometimes you're going to ask for 100% of 80% or 100% of 60%, because that's what the guys have in the tank. You can't, like you said, 162 games as an everyday player thinking that you're going to show up and not have a tight hamstring or a sore back or achy wrist when he got hit by a pitch. We saw Brandon Phillips play the bulk of the second half of the season with a small chip in his left wrist that affected his swing. There's definitely those things that are going to happen along the way. So we're just looking to see if we can get 100% of whatever they have to give on a regular basis. You can be satisfied with that if you get the performance and the effort every day.
And now you, as the managers, you look at your starting 8 out there in the field. Where would you like to see some improvement within that group of guys that are charged with, hey, these are your positions?
Well, I think, some of the things that I think stood out for us was on-base percentage and two-strike hitting and strike zone recognition, So we want to be better at getting good pitches to hit and hitting them and improving our two-strike approach. So we're able to cut down a bit on the strikeouts, put more balls in play, fight off tough pitches until we get something good to hit and then do something with it. That being said, that's going to be a universal message for every team that's out there. All 30 will have a very similar message. The difference will be, can we find a way to improve upon that? Can we find a universality with our team and say, hey, listen, we can be better than we already are. And I know that the guys were disappointed in how we finished last year. They expected more. So I anticipate a great start to the season and a great effort throughout the course of the entire season.
And now, as you look at the roster with what you've got with the pieces that are here right now and ready and are going to be there in Arizona as spring training gets going, what are you looking at lineup-wise? Have you gone through that in your mind on who's going to be maybe hitting where?
Not a great deal. And the reason being is that things can change. It's possible that we're going to have some different pieces to the 25-man roster between now and the beginning of spring training. And certainly a discussion on where Jay Bruce hits. If you put the 3-4 hitters back-to-back left-handers with Joey and Jay is definitely a consideration. Is Billy Hamilton going to be ready to be our leadoff guy? Do we have a fallback position if we feel that he needs a little bit more seasoning in AAA? We're optimistic that he doesn't. But where are we in those situations? And I think you have to really look at the what-ifs. What if one of our starters gets injured in spring training and in our starting rotation. You know, what can we do there? We have depth in the bullpen. We don't have a ton of organizational depth in the rotation. What happens if Billy might not be ready? What happens, you know, if we sustain an injury? What's our backup plan? So those are the things that I think about more. What happens if we have somebody that on our bench that could be an adequate third catcher, because we want Brian Pena to be an available pinch hitter. And if he's out of the game, something happens to our catcher, where do we go? Who do we have as a fallback third catcher? So those are some of the things we're thinking about right now.
Well, and of course, as you look at the starting rotation, you look at the pitching staff. Got some solid guys there. What else are you going to be looking to pull out of some of these fellas on a day-to-day basis? I mean, you work with them obviously very closely all through last season. What are some of the areas and some of the things you want to talk with the starters about doing a little bit better?
I want to elevate the ceiling with the starters. You know, I think they're from a generation of kids that 100 pitch limit is kind of that point. You can come in, you look up on the board and see you got 100 pitches and go, well, maybe I'm supposed to be tired now. And, you know, but you look at our guys, you look at a guy like Homer Bailey, never wants to come out of a game. Matt Latos has learned to keep himself in games a lot more consistently beyond the sixth inning. Mike Leake is a guy that we've been conservative with, number one, because he hadn't been in the big leagues before and played for 6 months straight. But he's to that point now where we should expect that he can throw more and be efficient more than 90 or 95 pitches a game and trust that he can give us 110 or 120 a start. So it's increasing that expectation from the starters so we don't have to ask too much out of the bullpen. Because in the end, when we talk about relievers, and we should have brought this guy in, it's the starters' responsibility to eat up the lion's share of the innings. And until you give them the chance to do that, until you stick with them, sometimes when they fail, you're never going to get them to be everything they can be.
So perfect case scenario, like to see these guys going into the seventh inning and maybe a little bit beyond?
Absolutely. You know, I don't like to think that the complete game is obsolete. You know, and again, it has to be done efficiently. We're not going to jack up the pitch counts to 140, 150 so a guy can get a complete game. But we want guys to taste the finish line and go for it. And obviously, if it's a one-run game, you always have to have somebody ready in case the situation dictates you need a relief pitcher. But if you have some wiggle room, you want these guys to taste the finish line and go for it. And you want to be able to give them that opportunity instead of, well, you threw 7 great innings, now we're going to get you out of there and let these other guys take over. I've never been a fan of that. We pay these guys money to play. They're conditioned to play. They work harder than these guys ever have in the history of the game. Let's give them that chance to go out there and play the game.
Well, and you've got to feel pretty good, though, about the bullpen as well. You're getting back some pieces that last year weren't available because of injuries.
Exactly right. You know, and you have to tip your cap to our bullpen last year to be able to weather the storm of losing Jonathan Broxton for the bulk of the season, as well as Sean Marshall, and to have huge step-up performances. We didn't have a weak link in our bullpen. If you go back and look statistically at that bullpen, there was not a weak link. There wasn't a oh-no moment for the fans to go, oh man, they're bringing in
Brian Wagner. We're bringing in Brian Wagner. We're panicking.
Right. So that, in and of itself, is a huge, unbelievably important place to be when you can roll out Hoover, or you can roll out Shimon, or you can roll out LeCure, Andrusik, whoever it is, and go out there and expect for performance.
All right. Now, you mentioned wanting to have the starting staff go a little bit longer. Is that also going to then play a little bit into the bullpen, where you're not just necessarily going to look at a situational pitching lineup, or a situation where you go, okay, well, this guy's going to match up pretty good lefty, so he's in for this against this lefty, I'm going to pull him after 2 or 3 pitches. Or is that, again, a situational thing where it just kind of dictates about where we are in the game?
Well, you know, you don't start every game with having all 7 relievers available. Quite often you have somebody down there that's pitched in 3 of the last 4 games, or 2 innings the night before, and you really don't want to use them. So you don't always have your full arsenal available. What I've never liked, and I've had it a couple of times in my career as a pitching coach, is have a specialist in the bullpen, a guy that gets one left-handed hitter out. And what bothers me about that is you take out one pitcher to bring in that lefty that gets only left-handed hitters out, and have to bring in another right-hander. So you use 3 pitchers to go through 2 hitters. And I don't like that. I've never liked it. It beats up your bullpen. Just because you see those guys warming up in the game, even if they don't get in the game, and they're getting hot in the bullpen, that's not like they didn't do anything that day. Your body feels the ramification of throwing 30 or 40 pitches in the bullpen to get loose, so even if you don't get in the game. So we have to take that into consideration as well. There's definitely going to be times where we match up lefty-lefty. righty, but for the most part, we have faith in our bullpen, and I think you're going to see guys kind of sticking it out a little bit longer than they have.
Good luck, and hopefully we'll be talking a long run come October.
Yeah, we're looking for a 7-month season.
That sounds great. Bryan Price, thanks so much.